Chapter 7, Role, also called accountabilities now. The first Scrum role, or accountability, developer. This person or collection of people will have all the skills required to accomplish the sprint goal. The sprint goal may also be called the product goal or release goal. To support this, the team is cross-trained increasingly as the team plans and builds. The useful metaphor here is T-shaped people. The shape of a T here is tall. It has a deep post, the vertical aspect of the T, representing a deep competency in a specific area. While new team members without deep competency are welcome in a Scrum team, joining the team with a deep skill allows for the next step, widening the top of the T. The top of the T is a horizontal bar representing teaching one or more other team members by pair working together and learning from one or more team members by pair working together. This horizontal line is not as deep, not yet at least. It's shallow and superficial, but enough to help the other team members. Through pair work and mob work, also called swarming, according to the pattern swarming, one-piece continuous flow, see the appendix, the team member deepens their core expertise and grows the width and depth of the top of their T. Eventually, they become a TT-shaped person with more than one deep skill and a very high level. And at a very high level of skill, they become what Joe Justice has named a black belt, a solid black symbol, being able to quickly act on any part of the product or service the team has committed to deliver the sprint goal. Elon Musk is an awesome example of a black belt, able to do 3D modeling, procurement, financial fundraising, chief health and safety officer accountabilities, machining operations, gluing, cleaning. Elon is full stack, and Elon works the factories and facilities, designing products on the floor and helping build them, drilling holes in things, lifting 20 kilograms and putting it on the rack. Now, a lot of other people in these companies are also black belts. Elon is a highly visible example. Many people can see Elon's full stackness, Elon's black belt. There's many thousands of other people in these organizations that also are so skillful that they can truly engage in any part of the work stream. And they do. That means they don't have to wait on other people. They can take an initiative or solve a problem all the way from realizing there's an opportunity or problem through it being done and in production and certified road legal, etc. Now's maybe a good time for me to say Paul Tacken is one of the very first extreme manufacturing black belts. And I'm lucky enough, I've had a chance to work with him several times. Paul Tacken comes up in this book a few times. Problems arise when the team subdivides into narrow functional roles or silos, often called Sloan silos, such as into test-specific roles and design-specific roles and production or deployment-specific roles, as this prevents help from flowing across these boundaries. These teams can still deliver a working product. It happens around the world every day. The downside is the pace of delivery and ability to develop new approaches across domains is reduced because the communication feedback loop takes longer. And in some places it's broken, there's no feedback. Some cases people design or make architectures and they never see the results of those architectures being built or tested. They don't get any feedback. And in some cases they do get feedback, but months or years later. And so their ability to increase their skill at making effective architecture is slower. Whereas if you're full stack and you as a group make an architecture and then you try to build according to the architecture and you test and then get field use feedback from real at scale user base of the architecture, you have a very fast learning loop as to whether that was an optimum or even successful architecture. You learn faster, and that's the goal. That's this speed. And now you can deploy your improvement faster than in the previous methods where you're waiting on each other. We have queuing states because you're separated by skills group or phase group. The ideal team of developers is a team of black belts. And the second best is a team interested in and motivated to become black belts. Teams of developers speed up as their waiting time is reduced. A highly useful measure is the number of decisions that escape the team. Here's what I mean. The team says, let's all go to Scrum training with Joe Justice. And they have to ask their boss, and their boss needs to ask their boss's boss, and that needs to be put in a training budget, which waits for a coalition on training budget funds to meet. And that's 2 weeks later. A critical decision maker didn't attend that time, so it goes to the next meeting, which is further 2 weeks later. That's a decision that escaped the team. And in this example, it's already taken more than a month. Whereas if the team can make the decision in team, the product owner has spend authority up to a certain limit or on certain defined types of spend, or the team together as a collective can spend their budget because they can see their budget on anything they decide by majority, depending on the method the team has chosen. That's a decision that did not escape the team. They can act immediately. So there's horror stories of manufacturing plants, automotive manufacturing plants, where there's a leak of antifreeze in the manufacturing facility from a huge tank, thousands of liters of tank. And there's workers just standing next to it as the tank dumps more and more antifreeze all over the production line, all over the parts, spoiling the parts, stopping production. And management says, why didn't anyone stop the leak? And they say, that's not our job. That's a decision where these people have been trained for that decision to escape the team. Whereas a full stack team is empowered to act immediately on whatever the problem or opportunity might be perceived to be. And you have less waiting and you avoid these problems that get worse without being addressed. Like someone could put on rubber gloves and stuff a bunch of rags into the crack and leak in the tank to stem the flow while the more robust fix is deployed. Okay. A highly useful measure is the number of decisions that escape the team. So that'd be per sprint. As a Scrum Master, if you come into a slow organization, you count how many decisions is the team waiting on someone outside the team to decide. Should we use this architecture or that? Should we use this supplier or that? Should we buy this license? Should we hire another employee? Should we work in this office space or that? Can we use this conference room? If the team can't make those decisions, write them down or at least keep a tally. And as that number is reduced per sprint, your team speeds up. That also means the team is receiving more decision-making rights that are relevant to the work the team needs to do. Okay. If a team has a question on approach, supplier, architecture, policy, or anything else, and has to wait for an answer from someone outside the team, morale drops and overall throughput and timeline to completion suffers. We recommend Scrum Masters measure and post visibly on the team Scrum board, virtually or physically, but where everyone sees it every day, the number of decisions that escaped the team each sprint, or if it's really bad, even each day. In some cases, it happens more than once an hour. So depending on how many decisions are escaping the team, use that relevant time unit. If you're having more than one decision and escape the team an hour, you might need to put per hour. And I've seen that in some companies where they're really unempowered and have very low decision-making rights, and they are very slow, they're waiting, which then leads them to multitask. The teams then say, well, we're blocked there, so let's start something else. Then when the decision does come in, it's a disruption. It's the optimum slowness, and many companies operate that way normally. Scrum can really help a lot of companies. This informs the team where they need to increase their expertise, their network, their trust, their decision-making rights, and their skill in execution, with self-checking so they can earn more decision-making rights in a low-risk way. Another primary method to speed up and increase morale in the team of developers is to increase the level of technical excellence. Mastery brings speed and satisfaction and motivation. A fast feedback loop alerts the team if a masterful operation has been completed. Possibly by having a coach observe the team, quickly builds morale and skill and speed. This also reinforces excellent technical practices, which masters of a skill perform with regularity. This is where collections of technical practices like extreme programming and extreme manufacturing boost team output and emotional resiliency. A next priority is shared ownership. If all developers feel a near equal ownership of their sprint goal, the quality and speed increases due to the serotonin pleasure response being stronger when progress is made. This is amplified by the empathy created during mob or swarm or pairing work. Dr. Ina Semyonova, neuroscientist, explains. Empathy increases the release of the hormone oxytocin, which has a positive effect on team spirit. As a neuroscientist, I know, in this case it's Dr. Ina speaking, I know that playing, laughing, and humor, that is the creative things about learning and working, increase productivity, namely by increasing dopamine and endorphin levels and thus increasing our motivation. And that makes us happy. Before each event, my brain signals to me, you can tinker with the next topic. How nice. But that's not all. The happiness molecules also increase curiosity and thereby promote the acquisition of new knowledge, as well as creativity in the search for new approaches. This creates the feeling of freedom. With this playful approach, I was able to determine the difference between Scrum in theory and Scrum in practice, namely in the head. Too often, Scrum is defined by its events and artifacts. What they are based on is neglected, values and principles. Dr. Ina Semyonova, Scrum is more than a method, Scrum is a mindset. Okay, back to my words and the words of the other contributing authors. Team ownership, collaboration, reduction of specialized knowledge, growing each other towards equals, pursuing mastery, and treating the entire Scrum team as the smallest element in Scrum truly supports psychology for a better workplace chemically. This is reinforced by rewarding the developers for quality. By the way, what I'm trying to say here is support psychology for a better workplace. I mean, oxytocin, serotonin, it's measurable positive chemical responses in the brain. And by positive, I mean leading to better decision-making skills, higher test scores on knowledge retention, depth of understanding, etc. So measurable superior outcomes correlated with certain hormone mix in the brain. That's what I mean by chemically. This is reinforced by rewarding the developers for quality. We encourage Scrum Masters to add a relevant quality metric to the team's Scrum board and draw the team's attention to it, to encourage improvement in a constructive and loving way. This topic is often sensitive for professionals who care about their work. It is important to amplify the positive effects of the natural biochemical rewards. For example, taking moments to enjoy the serotonin release when work is completed with quality. Now, a note, Elon's pretty hardcore about this. He has said many times publicly, the seeds of defeat are sown on the field of victory, meaning as soon as you do something awesome, you need to be already preparing for the next awesome thing. There is, though, I don't want to say formal, but absolutely space created for basking in the chemical response of success in the Musk companies. It's not like a 2-week vacation. It's like a few minutes of, oh, that was amazing. Sometimes a whole evening, but usually a few minutes. Next, a useful principle for the team of developers is to desire automation in any step that is not creative problem solving. If part of the design process is not creative, but becoming a standard operating procedure, a team that hungers to automate will increase in speed. Improving the ability to create automation will allow the team the ability and enthusiasm to create more automation. Making more automation allows the team to be less afraid of iterating away from the current automation stack. Now the team is willing to continuously improve, even if it means abandoning some of their previous automatic processes. It is a circular, self-reinforcing, positive loop. This is partly why Amazon, one of the highest valued companies in the world by market capitalization, currently has all jobs posted saying you will learn internally creative automation tools. And we encourage you to have knowledge of base logical thinking by learning a programming language such as C#. But you won't be using that language in Amazon. It's stacks of automation instructions created by the various areas of Amazon, from vehicle logistics and fulfillment operations to advertising, marketing, and new product account management. What I'm trying to say here is in Amazon, you're very seldom, if ever, even if you're a software developer, writing in C#. But even if you're a marketer or not a software developer or a logistics manager, you are using Amazon's automation tools and you're drag and dropping automation stacks. And this is a lot of what the work in Amazon actually is, optimizing automation stacks to be continuously relevant or even more valuable. And that's really what runs the company. Amazon is a stack of automation, and the humans are continuously improving in a really fun way that automation to make more business value. And that's part of why Amazon's so valuable. And I will recommend that for every single company. Our job is to create automations and be excited for automations on anything except creative problem solving. Scrum Masters are the process coaches for the team. They are in fact also a master of Scrum. They are highly trained in the workings of Scrum and why Scrum works, so they can establish 3-5-3 in any team that is interested to try it. They can then guide the team to evolve past the 3-5-3 into hyper productivity, because these Scrum Masters have also been trained why 3-5-3 works, the principles behind each aspect, so that they can make trade-offs and modifications in real time to increase the value of the principle behind the practice, and eventually transcend or ignore the specific practice entirely without losing any of the value of the principles. After the Scrum Master's ability to set up the 3-5-3 of Scrum, the launch pad, and knowing how to tune towards hyperproductivity, the Scrum Master is responsible for speed. Not speed with no quality. I'm only considering speed that meets the quality bar here. Scrum Master. While the developers tune for increasing high quality, and the Scrum Master encourages this, the Scrum Master ultimately owns the flow of work through the team. The Scrum Master makes this flow of work visible by using the Scrum board, starting often on the left side with not yet ready ideas for consideration of what the team could produce. The next 3 columns of the Scrum board are the product backlog. Well, I said the next 3 columns and only said product backlog. Oh, yeah, that's right, because there's 3 sprints worth of product backlog and many product backlogs in the example I'm giving. Here's a product backlog in the graphic behind me. And I'll show you one in the book in a moment. Ready backlog is backlog that meets the team's definition of ready. The definition of ready varies team by team, but at a minimum, that means the proposed backlog has been discussed by the team and the team is excited about it. Likely the team has approaches in mind and specific mitigations to learn aspects the team does not yet know how to achieve. Advanced teams have automation steps in mind for aspects they are likely to repeat and could be reduced to a standard operating procedure or automation. An important note here, the product backlog is written in terms of business goals. The business should understand these things and why they're valuable. So these are by definition, bigger chunks. They're full stack. They include planning, analysis, build, test, deploy. Each of these are actually a waterfall project, but they're a waterfall project that will take less than a month. And how that's achieved is discussed later. It's with very intelligent splitting and also the team speeding up through the practices, some of which we're talking about here. The 4th column of the Scrum board is the focus, the highlight, the current sprint. This is an ordered list of the goals the team of developers is excited to swarm and mob on together. The Scrum Master highlights this stack of work and tries to keep 80% or more of the team's focus the entire sprint just on knocking these work items to done with quality one at a time. The last 4 columns of the Scrum board are, actually, I should talk a little bit more about the sprint. So the sprint is written by the people doing the work, the developers. It's not given to them. The developers look at the top product backlog item, the top business goal, and in healthy organizations, everyone creates those, but at least the product owner creates those. But ideally, the developers, people on other teams, customers are helping create product backlog items, and the product owner ultimately is the final authority on their ordering or what goes in there. The developers take the top priority one. And again, developers include testers and designers. They're all called developers in Scrum. They take the top priority one and they make their technical plan of how they think they're going to build, automate, test, release this thing. That's called the sprint backlog. And the developers make it. No one makes it except the developers. That's to avoid micromanagement, which reduces morale and constrains people. If it's a standard operating procedure, then that should be automated anyway. It shouldn't be the sprint backlog. Then the sprint backlog is automate that thing, not do it. Do the automation that will then do the result. The last 4 columns on the Scrum board are dashed line outlines of where the done work should go. This creates appetite for the serotonin release of the team member who, with all the Scrum team and maybe other teams watching, triumphantly will move the work item into the dashed outline and claim it meets the quality bar to be called done. That quality bar is called definition of done. Well, here's what a Scrum board should look like. Now, these columns actually include each step in your value stream map. We'll talk more about that later in the book. For beginners, and actually this is a fine way to deliver for a long time, we start with not ready ideas. Then we have 3 sprints of ready business goals. And a sprint is less than a month. In Tesla, it can be as short as 3 hours or even shorter. Then we have the sprint backlog, 1 sprint, 1 release. So 1 month or less. In Tesla, it's 3 hours or even shorter. Then we do have what's the WIP, and it's intentionally 1 item to encourage the team to work together on 1 item, to encourage cross-functionality, build T-shape, and build us towards being black belts. And then we have an individual dashed spot for each of these cards. This is like a board game, and you move these items and you know where they can go so you can celebrate their doneness. So the current sprint can go to done here. The next sprint can go to done here, and you have this release goal. Now, there is a blocked box for something that's outside your control. You're waiting on a supplier and you've asked the supplier if they need help. You're checking on the supplier. Can you help them? But in any case, you're waiting on the supplier, whether that supplier is another team or another company. This is for items outside the team's control. We try to reduce or eliminate anything outside the team's control, but when it happens, we have a place to put those cards so we don't forget them. We can wait on them. We do have the team name, who the current product owner is, who the current Scrum Master is, and who's playing the developer roles. Note that the Scrum board is allowed to look any way the team may find valuable. This is also called an Agile board and can be called a Kanban board. That's just fine. Having a WIP number is necessary for this to also be called a Kanban board, and I highly recommend this. The principle behind the Scrum board is to make work visible. The work and the flow of the work should be visible to the team and to any interested stakeholders. Joe recommends the Scrum board or Agile board or Kanban board or work board or team board be a living value stream map, with each step in the team's value stream map represented by a column on the Scrum board. For more on value stream mapping, see our book Group Scrum, actually being renamed Group Agile, I think. We'll get more market feedback. And here's the tentative URL. A beginner elementary value stream map applicable to most work is given in this example board, starting with not ready concepts to 3 sprints of explored and validated work to be done, to the current sprint and focus, to doing, with a blocked box to place work waiting for external stakeholders, and then 4 sprints worth of spots waiting for done cards. As this is happening, the Scrum Master is looking, listening, even sensing, if they're highly skilled, for impediments. What could possibly be modified to reduce the frustration, the effort, the complexity, the time, the risk of the work that the team is actually doing? The Scrum Master writes these impediments down on their own to-do list. Joe Justice uses a Scrum Master Kanban board as described in the book Personal Kanban by Jim Benson. And there's two authors, Jim Benson and Antoinette. I haven't met her. Oh, what's her name? There's two authors. So highlight here. Let's credit both authors. Tanone is the other author maybe, and Goes to Work. This can be suggesting automation projects to the team of developers or even to other teams, or buying automation projects. Let us be very clear here. The Scrum Master is directly responsible and accountable for speed increase across the team. And they do this by removing impediments or frustrations before the team hits the impediments or frustrations. Product owner. The product owner is employed anytime the Scrum team owns a complete module of a product or entire product or service. A product owner's job is to ensure the product backlog or list of work to do on the Scrum board contains only the highest possible value work the team of developers could do this sprint and the next 3 sprints. If the team has little or no influence over what work they do, a product owner is not needed on the team. I'll be clear, that is a controversial statement. Other Scrum trainers disagree with that statement. I find it to be absolutely true, so I will confidently make that statement. But if other Scrum professionals or Agile professionals you work with have a different opinion, please be aware different opinions exist, and they do have rational reasons. So I've encouraged you to understand their point of view. One good reason is so that the team has a role that could take prioritization authority in the future. Still, though, it's an unempowered product owner now, and that's frustrating and reduces morale and may cause confusion as to what a product owner means in the company when you have an unempowered product owner who's not able to prioritize what goes in the product backlog or in what order or when it's done. This scenario is symptomatic and emblematic of a command and control transactional culture, which makes it very difficult and unlikely to iterate based on customer feedback during development. That also makes it difficult or unlikely to discover additional customer visible value. And it makes it difficult or unlikely to cut out work that was discovered to be seldom or rarely used. Someone please help me split that into shorter sentences. Let's edit this. This point, let's highlight this. It needs to be. Wow, that's a long sentence. Yeah, that's the way I think, but that's not a comfortable way to read. That needs to be cut, split into smaller pieces. This point is reinforced by Jim Johnson of the Standish Group, which tracks project success by industry sector since 1985. And their research reports that 60% of features built and maintained are seldom or rarely used. Jim Johnson explained this during a keynote in Sardinia to the extreme programming community. You can see Mike Cohn's posting of the core data from this study in our appendix. Building unused products is so normal that empowered product owners provide a business advantage by helping see what is less likely to be used and not building it. We observe all the highest market capitalization companies in the world are rewarding innovation in their working teams and having a minimum of centralized planning. GAFA, all of them do this. These companies go even further, FANG, GAFA, etc. These companies go even further, reducing the feedback loop in the structure of their company by removing organizational or reporting splits between planning, design, development, or build and test. It's true that Scrum can and does work in transactional working teams or test teams. The empowering and morale building capability to tune the value up by recreating the backlog with the product owner's support is not available if you're told what to do. In such instance, it may be more healthy to simply not have a product owner on the team A sales lead or customer communication lead or account lead will likely suffice. So please note, it's slower to not have a product owner on team, and that's coping with the command and control culture most likely. If you can have an empowered product owner, I recommend highly that you do. It's more responsive to customer feedback and leads to higher business value produced in the team. So that is the recommendation. Let's return to the case at hand of an empowered team that is encouraged to recreate their own backlog to maximize customer visible value, like Amazon, like Facebook, like Dropbox, like Tesla, like all the highest market capitalization companies in the world. The product owner works with customers, stakeholders, regulatory compliance officials, technical experts both in and outside the team, influencers, and the people who will maintain and support the product to ensure there is nothing in the sprint backlog other than the absolute minimum required to have the coolest, most exciting, highest value thing done and tested at the end of the sprint or before. And the same for the next 3 sprints. In this way, the product owner is making funding decisions every time they confirm a card is placed on the Scrum board in the product backlog. The product owner, therefore, is financially empowered, often with a specific budget to achieve the release goal across 1 or more sprints. The product owner has helped to accomplish this. The product owner does not prioritize the product backlog and remove cards all by themselves. The team of developers is typically far more informed about what work is dependent on other work. The developers support the product owner refining the product backlog, also called grooming, often once or more per day, as the product owner tunes the product backlog in front of the team while the team works. Again, Dr. Ina Simeonova, neuroscientist, explains. There are certain points to consider when formulating the goal, product goal, release goal, sprint goal, in line with Start with Why, How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Take Action by Simon Sinek. Sprint goals only have a particularly motivating effect when it becomes clear why we do something. It shouldn't mean implement at least 40 story points. That's not a good sprint goal, or attract at least 5 new investors. Actually, I am a fan of attract at least 5 new investors, but I'll leave that for later in the book. These are details. Rather, it is a memory storage to infinity and beyond. Why do I implement 40 story points? To have infinite memory for my application. Or money, 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 must be funny. She's using the ABBA song here. Why should I recruit 5 new investors? Because I can implement projects with the financial means and I enjoy projects. From a point of view expressed by neuroscientists, these target formulations, or the answer to the question why. These address the limbic system in the brain, which is responsible for our emotional world. Elon Musk prioritizes this as well. He's very vocal about that. A feeling of connection with the goal arises. The positive feelings that are felt are effective motivators. For example, the idea and the anticipation that you will never have to worry about storage or financing again. The motivators ensure that we will never lose sight of the goal and strive to achieve it. Dr. Ina Simeonova, what organization and companies can learn from Scrum. What about large projects? A large project, or even an extra large project, is split by the product owner and developers into extra small projects. Mathematically, a large project is very likely to be composed of 11 extra small projects. More on this in Chapter 8, Estimate. For much more detail on the product owner role and how to accomplish it, including managing the finances of the Scrum team iteratively across sprints, even within the traditional phased or even annual budgeting organization, and even with fixed scope and fixed date contracts, please see our book, Product Owner. In the Scrum Master seminar, we recommend playing the Scrum Master versus Project Manager, the responsibilities game. Renee Troughton, September 4th, 2013, is credited for creating this game. We first ask each team attending the seminar to work silently for 3 minutes, writing down many responsibilities of a traditional project manager or project leader in a pre-Scrum organization. The result is a pile of sticky notes, physical or virtual, for each team. We then ask the Scrum Master of each team to facilitate the team sorting all these responsibilities into one of 4 categories. In a Scrum organization, the product owner, Scrum Master, or developers would now perform this new responsibility. Some responsibilities of a traditional organization's project manager or leader may be solved in other ways, perhaps by the team working closely together or work being visible in the product backlog, in which case maybe we don't need to do that particular piece of work anymore. In this case, we have a 4th column, waste, to receive work we truly might not need to conduct anymore. After 4 minutes of sorting, the teams are all shown an answer sheet provided by the instructor and asked to discuss this in their team for the next 5 minutes. So the teams sort everything they thought a project manager or leader might do in a non-Scrum, a command and control company that has project managers and leaders, and say in Scrum, we don't have project managers or leaders. We have product owners, but they're not the same as project managers. We have Scrum Masters, they're not the same as project managers or leaders. We have developers or team, and they distribute these work items. Now, what's really important here from an instructor standpoint is they have time to talk about it. Often, someone's attending the seminar that's very experienced in Scrum, and they're attending with their team to help them. Ask them not to give all the answers away, but to let their teams discuss, their new team members who are brand new to agility, to discuss and try to guess or determine or discern where these responsibilities should go in a Scrum organization. If a team is stuck on a topic on placing one of these cards for more than 60 seconds, then morale does start to crater. They lose confidence. That's when the experienced team member should help them aggressively. But we don't want the experienced team member to just do the work for the team. That causes the other players in their team to become less engaged. This matches the company as a service philosophy, company as a service, where teams each own a single mission or goal or module or service. Office space, accounting, possibly legal support, maybe hiring support are handled by Agile teams, Scrum teams. Scrum teams handle work that previously may have been provided by organizational hierarchy or departments. This is highly effective, provided each of these teams has all the skills in team to complete their goal, and few or no decisions escape the team, are made outside the team. To keep efficiency of use of resources very high, we incentivize each team's product owner to prioritize the highest business value work. Now we have an anti-fragile organization, or on a very direct path to hyperproductivity across the entire enterprise. For more information on this, we recommend the book Group Scrum. You'll also see a lot more on this in chapter 16, Switch, which includes Justice's Law, which is part of what you've just seen here indirectly. 3 questions are quite likely when performing this exercise. First, what about risk? Who owns it? Traditionally, project leaders or project managers were responsible for identifying and mitigating risk. What is the most efficient mechanism known for Scrum teams to identify and mitigate risk? The answer observed in the quickest companies is everyone mobs onto every risk if it is slowing down the team. But in the case that does not happen, who is accountable? It depends on the type of risk. Perhaps the risk is technical. For example, the team does not have the skills with a specific tool, material, or technique to complete the sprint. The first Scrum role to discover this would be the developers, because they're doing the work. They might say something like, I'm not sure how to do this. Do you know how? You don't either? Do we know anyone who knows how? The developers together will propose solutions, such as hire a consultant who knows how, or talk to other teams and attempt to borrow someone who knows how, or take trainings to learn how. Establish a book club and lunch and learns to teach themselves how. Maybe hire a new team member who knows how, etc. Each of these are options to solve the problem. Each option is added to the product backlog not ready column. The entire Scrum team then discusses, including the product owner and Scrum Master, and ultimately chooses the option that is most efficient for highest overall value. This conversation is facilitated by the Scrum Master. They might whiteboard it and help put value estimates on different options, costs. And ultimately, the product owner agrees to be accountable for the financial implications. Note that the product owner owning the financials is only for beginning teams. As teams improve and become used to real-time financial trade-offs, the entire team simply swarms and decides solutions to mitigate risk by consensus. But in beginning Scrum, the Scrum roles own risks associated with their roles. Product owners own financial risk. Scrum masters own process or flow or speed risk. By process, I mean the 5 events of Scrum and the 1 activity. So risk is our sprint planning effective? Do the developers understand what we're building? Is our sprint retrospective effective? Are we creating Kaizen that speeds up the quality, increases the morale, increases the speed of the team? So are the 5 events effective? That's what I mean by process risk, the Scrum process for the Scrum Master. And developers own quality or technical risk. Are we building the thing the right way? Is it sustainable? Is it maintainable? Is it reusable if we need to? Next, frequent question, performance reviews. The Scrum Guide, that's a little weird. There's a bullet here and not a bullet here. And now the style has changed. Yeah, it went from Calibre to Times New Roman. So let's make this Calibre. Size 12. Size 12, okay. Next, frequent question, performance reviews. The Scrum Guide, our beginners getting started guide, does not mention performance reviews in any way. Looking at the principles of Scrum, higher efficiency through team buy-in, shared ownership by not overruling the team, faster decision-making by avoiding decisions escaping the team, all of these practices are aided by the teams conducting their own performance reviews. A useful template is to divide all team income evenly across all team members. The team is then paid incrementally. Each time the team's product or service achieves a fundable release or milestone, as written directly on the cards in the product backlog, the team is paid the labeled amount. We recommend a more thorough review on Agile funding and pay methods in our book, Agile Transformation. Also, chapter 16 talks about this model. Balance this by empowering the team to conduct their own hiring and even layoffs and training. But all hiring and training must come out of the same pool of money that is divided for all team member salaries, and salaries must be equal, and all decisions must be made by simple majority. The net effect after the initial thrill or disorientation is a self-regulating complex adaptive system. We should stress again, this works best when funding is released to the team when working and usable versions are released, not when a plan or design only are completed without testing. Accepting work is done and incentivizing the team with payments before the work has been tested and deployed does not give us a forward trend of when the value the team is pursuing will be visible to the customer, when we're actually going to be done. Funding the team only when the customer receives value further encourages cross-functionality. A customer receives value when our funded projects include all phases. A customer receives value frequently when we split large and extra large projects into extra small projects. Extra small projects include testing and release and can receive funding on completion. This step further encourages contracts to be written in terms of tests to pass. Each test to pass has a corresponding financial release. The funds are released only when specific definition of done or quality bar is achieved. Finally, staffing. Third question that often comes up when doing this roles and responsibilities game. Many organizations claim their hiring process takes months or even years and is not able to keep pace with the needs of the company. If this is the case, creating Scrum teams for recruiting, no and here, can dramatically expedite effective hiring, but that doesn't reduce the risk that a high-performing team could be disrupted by a non-compatible recruit. Many organizations choose to empower the teams to conduct their own recruiting and hiring, with the teams themselves putting cards in the backlog to recruit and hire. This works very well when the team owns their own project budget and is incentivized to achieve the most efficient path towards rapidly achieving customer visible value. Teams conducting their own hiring is not required by the Scrum Guide. But remember, the Scrum Guide is the basics to move the team towards becoming a complex adaptive system, solving their own problems in team.